What airlines don't tell you before boarding. You know that feeling when you're standing in line at the airport, clutching your boarding pass, waiting to step onto the plane? There's a mix of excitement and a little stress. We're either dreaming about the trip ahead or hoping the long hours in the air won't feel too painful. But here's the thing. Airlines don't exactly tell us everything about what really happens before, during, and after boarding. And honestly, the less they tell us, the smoother things stay for them. But if you've ever wondered what's really going on behind the curtain, or why certain things feel off, you're about to get the inside scoop. So let's talk about what airlines don't always share before we board. The boarding process isn't as fair as it looks.
Hello.
We've all been there.
How are
The
you?
moment boarding
I'm tired.
begins,
How are
there's
you?
this huge rush to the gate.
Wishing you were
It
in
feels
Aruba.
chaotic, right? What airlines don't really explain is that the whole boarding group system isn't just about efficiency. It's about money. Those early boarding groups, they're basically sold to you under the names of priority boarding, preferred seats, or loyalty perks. The airline gains extra revenue, and in return, you get to be on the plane a little earlier. What they also don't mention is that boarding isn't really about your comfort, it's about making the turnaround as quick as possible. The faster passengers sit down, the faster the plane can leave, and the more flights they can squeeze into a single day. So while we're thinking it's about order, it's really about speed and profit. And those groups that seem like a fair system, they're designed to make us feel like we have a choice. But if you're in the later groups, it usually just means overhead bin space is gone by the time you board, and now you're stuck checking in your bag at the last minute. That's something airlines don't emphasize because they'd rather sell you an upgrade instead. Why airplanes feel colder than they should? Ever noticed how airplanes almost always feel chilly? We're shivering under those thin blankets, pulling jackets tight, wondering if the air conditioning is blasting just to annoy us. But here's what's actually happening. Airlines keep the cabin cooler on purpose. Warmer air makes people feel faint more easily. Fainting on a plane can quickly become an emergency. Cooler temperatures help reduce that risk. The part they don't tell us? It's also a cost-saving move. Cooler cabins help with air circulation and keep the environment more stable. So while we're sitting there wishing we had packed another sweater, airlines are really just trying to balance safety and efficiency. Not that they'll tell us to bring an extra layer because, hey, they'd rather you pay for that travel blanket they sell on board. The food situation is more about logistics than taste. We often complain about airplane food, how it tastes bland or how there's never quite enough variety. But the truth is, it's not entirely the airline's fault. What they usually don't explain is that taste buds actually change when we're up at cruising altitude. The dry cabin air and lower pressure make food taste duller, which is why even well-prepared meals feel flavorless. Here's another detail. Most food is prepared hours in advance, sometimes even a day before, then chilled, packed, and reheated. It's more about logistics than cuisine. And because airlines have to keep costs tight, they won't overload the plane with extra meals. That's why if you forget to select your preferred option online or you're seated near the back, there's a good chance your choice won't be available. Airlines know this, but they don't usually spell it out because they want to keep the image of choice alive.
Oxygen masks don't last as long as you think. We've all seen the safety demonstration. If the cabin loses pressure, oxygen masks will drop down, and we're told to place them over our nose and mouth. What airlines don't really highlight is that those masks only provide about 12 to 15 minutes of oxygen. Sounds scary, right? But here's the key. Pilots are trained to descend quickly in an emergency to a safer altitude where passengers can breathe normally. So the short oxygen supply is usually enough. Airlines just don't talk about the time limit because it sounds alarming. Instead, they keep the messaging simple. Put the mask on, stay calm, breathe normally. Not all seats are created equal. When we book a flight, the seat map makes it look like every spot is the same, except maybe the ones with extra legroom. But here's what they don't tell us. Some seats have drawbacks that don't show up until we're sitting in them. For example, the very back of the plane can feel bumpier during turbulence. Seats near the bathroom might come with constant foot traffic and smells. And exit row seats, while spacious, often have stricter rules. You can't store bags under the seat in front of you, and you have to be ready to help in an emergency. Airlines rarely highlight these downsides. They let us discover them ourselves, because if they admitted it, fewer people would willingly choose those spots. Instead, they keep the focus on extra legroom or window view and leave the rest unsaid. Delays are sometimes about money, not weather. We've all sat through the announcements, your flight is delayed due to weather. Sometimes that's true, but other times, weather is just the easiest explanation. The reality is, delays can also be caused by crew scheduling, maintenance issues, or the need to wait for connecting passengers on another flight. Airlines often prefer to use weather as the explanation because it's something nobody can argue with. If it's a staffing issue or poor planning, that makes the airline look bad. Weather, on the other hand, feels like an unavoidable act of nature. So while we're left sighing at the gate, we might never know the real reason we're running late. The air you're breathing isn't as fresh as you think. When we settle into our seats and the air starts circulating, it feels like we're breathing in fresh air the whole time. But here's what airlines don't often explain. The cabin air is a mix of fresh air from outside and recirculated air from inside. Now, before we panic, it's worth knowing that the air is filtered through high-efficiency systems designed to trap bacteria and particles. In fact, the filtration is often cleaner than the air in most buildings. But still, not everything gets through. And that's why you'll often hear people talk about catching a cold after flying. Airlines don't emphasize the recirculated part because fresh, clean air sounds much more appealing. Why they dim the lights before takeoff and landing? Ever wondered why the cabin lights suddenly dim during takeoff or landing? It can feel cozy, almost like it's setting the mood. But the real reason is about safety. If something goes wrong and we need to evacuate quickly, dim lights help our eyes adjust faster to outside lighting conditions, whether it's bright daylight or total darkness. Airlines don't always mention this detail in the announcement because it's one of those things that might make passengers nervous. Instead, it's presented like a normal routine. Lights down, window shades up, when in reality, it's all about preparing for the rare possibility of an emergency. Cancellations and compensation are a game of words. Here's something airlines almost never tell us outright. Depending on the country, passengers might actually be entitled to compensation when flights are canceled or delayed. In Europe, for example, there are strict rules about payouts if your flight is delayed by several hours. In other places, the rules aren't as strong, but passengers often don't even know their rights. Airlines know this, and instead of explaining our rights clearly, they usually frame cancellations in a way that makes us accept it without asking too many questions. They'd rather deal with fewer claims, so the less we know, the smoother things are for them. The bottom line, airlines don't say out loud. At the end of the day, airlines are running a business. That means their top priorities are efficiency, speed, and profit. Comfort comes second. Safety, of course, is always maintained, but the little details that could make us feel uneasy or reveal how much of the process is about money are kept quiet. When we board a plane, we're entering a system that's been carefully designed to balance costs, safety, and our perception of the experience. Airlines would rather keep us focused on the destination, the service, and the excitement of travel than on the behind-the-scenes truths that might make us question the journey. Closing thoughts. So, the next time we're buckling up, adjusting our seatbelt, and waiting for takeoff, it's worth remembering that there's more going on than meets the eye. Airlines don't tell us everything before boarding, not because they want to trick us in a dangerous way, but because simplicity keeps things smoother. They want us calm, compliant, and ready for the ride. And maybe that's not such a bad thing. After all, flying is still one of the safest ways to travel. But knowing these little details can make us smarter travelers. We'll know why it's cold, why boarding feels so chaotic, why delays aren't always what they seem, and why that little oxygen mask is more limited than we imagined. Travel is full of wonder, but it's also full of secrets. And the airlines? They'd rather keep some of those secrets tucked neatly behind the cabin door.